Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've recently got Botox. I'm going to take you along for the journey because it is an emotional roller coaster if you've not gotten Botox before, if you haven't gotten it in a really long time. Recently I finished breastfeeding, so my first phone call was to get Botox. If you're curious about my experience and recommendations, follow along. Let's hit that like button, subscribe, and jump into today's video. Okay, so starting off, I haven't gotten Botox in a very long time because I've been pregnant or breastfeeding or pregnant or breastfeeding or pregnant or breastfeeding for like the past 100 years, people. So beginning of April, I decided I was ready for Botox. I couldn't wait. I had some recommendations from some friends for an injector, and that brings me to my first tip or piece of advice. When you're first planning on getting Botox, it's all about choosing the right injector. Get a recommendation, make sure they have their credentials, whether they're a doctor, they're a nurse or a nurse practitioner, or they're a very seasoned esthetician. Prices will vary based on who injects you. So that's my first piece of advice. You also want to look at the person injecting you, see how their face looks. If you're kind of on board with how they're looking and kind of their aesthetic, then you're going to be in good hands, people, because really it's up to the practitioner to be conservative or more aggressive and kind of walk you through the process. So I ended up choosing my injector. Two of my girlfriends have seen her before. I went and she's highly recommended. She is a nurse practitioner with over 10 years experience. She's like a medical director at a med spa, as well as just a nurse in her day-to-day life. So I felt like I was in pretty good hands and I was very happy. So when we first went, we chatted about my face. Another thing you want to know is like, how does your face move? Where are your expression? Where are you looking to get Botox? And then chatting with your injector about where you want to do it. If they're good at their job, they're going to tell you, less is more, start up conservative like my injector did. And then if you want to come back for more, you can always come back for more. So yes, that's what we did. We started mapping out my face. I said my 11s are very aggressive, which they are. If you know me, I'm very expressive when I talk, which is, just wonderful for, anti-aging. So she mapped out my face. We put these little white marks on where I said, okay, my 11s, I don't want my brows to drop. I want to make sure I'm open. I don't know how I feel about a brow lift because of Spock brows. I got smile lines, but I don't want the jelly roll on my cheeks. I mean, there's this huge conversation. And if you go down a research rabbit hole, you know that bad Botox happens more often than not. And they say, don't inject here, do inject here, watch your face fall, it might lift. And so it can be very concerning because your face is how you express yourself. It's going to be with you for the next at least 3 months until that Botox wears off. Which brings me to another point, Botox does wear off, so if you absolutely hate it and there's something that looks kind of funny, give it some time because it will wear off over time. Okay, so my injector mapped out my face, she cleansed me, she injected me, and we talked about downtime afterwards. Botox has little to no downtime, but you do want to sit upright for a good 4 to 6 hours. My injector recommended I sit up for 6 hours afterwards, so you're not going to want to book your Botox appointment too late. Book it morning, afternoon, something that you can sit upright and you're not going to be laying down because the Botox can migrate. So for me, I had it booked at like 11 a.m. and she said, I'm going to go conservative with you. We're trying to figure out what I liked. And she said it takes about 3 visits before she gets to know someone's face. So I kept that in mind. I said, yes, let's go conservative. I haven't had Botox in so long. Anything will help at this point. I'll give you my exact Botox map right here. Okay, so I did 15 in my glabellas, 9 in my forehead, 4 on my crow's feet, and 4 on my nostrils for a total of 32 units. It takes about a week for Botox to kick in, so you're not going to see results instantly, and then 2 weeks for the full result. So my injector recommended not doing any touch-ups until the full 2-week mark until we fully see how the Botox sets in. And I think that's a good piece of advice. Because if you know, there is an internal dialogue that happens after you get Botox. You wake up the next day thinking, oh, it's going to be perfect, and it's not. You don't really notice the difference at all, and then you start having that, oh wait, did it work? Did it not work? I can still see lines here, I can still see lines here. And then you might experience something like I do, where I'm like, oh my God, my brow is dropping here. Do I look sleepy? What's going on? Highly, highly recommend for you to wait that full 2 weeks because things will shift and change. If, your frontalis muscles start setting in before your glabellas, for example, you might get a heavier brow, but then the brow will be lifted when the glabellas set in. So there's this huge science. I'm not an esthetician. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the face as well as, but I do know that some muscles will lift, some will lower, and you want to let the whole Botox sit in before you start freaking out and Googling everything like I'm sure a lot of us have done, and I am very guilty of it. I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, oh my God, I've got ptosis, which is complete droopiness of your eye, which I don't. But if you do have concerns with your Botox, whether that's not being as aggressive or setting in, or you feel like maybe a brow is dropping more than the other, you can go and talk to your injector after you've had the Botox. So for me, I felt like my 11s were still pretty aggressive, and so she went and touched them up, and then I also talked about maybe this brow's dropping a little bit, so she touched up a little more around my eyebrows just to give them more of a lift. I was worried about Spock brows. I mean, if you go on the internet, you can see all the terminology for Botox gone wrong. You know, ptosis, lazy eyes, Spock brows, just, you know, they're nightmares. I do suggest staying away from the internet and knowing that if something is not quite right after the initial injection, you can go back for a follow-up. And if your practitioner is good, they will see you. My injector did not charge me, which was wonderful. And we just kind of talked about my face again. I will say I did end up getting my nostrils done, which is really quite fun. I've never done that before. There's like this thing on the internet that says, you know, this will make your nose look smaller. I will say that it doesn't make your nose smaller, but maybe appear a little smaller. Maybe my nose appears as bigger, that big personality when it's flaring. So I highly recommend, if you're someone like me who has nostril flaring, to go and check it out, because I'm really happy with that. I also, when I went back for my follow-up, I said I think I need a little bit more because they are quite aggressive. I think we only did 2 units each side, so she ended up doing another 2, and it really just kind of froze things. My 11s right now are not frozen completely. I actually ended up texting her after my touch-up on my 11s and saying, I think like they're still moving. However, I do think that a little movement is good. As you can see, they're actually okay. It did set in. She said, let's wait the full 2 weeks and then we can decide, and I won't be going back for another touch-up. She also recommended maybe we just target the 11s a little more aggressively the next time we see each other. I think we have to be careful with Botox. I don't want the full frozen look. I don't think anybody does. I still want to be able to express myself and smile and be happy and lift and be surprised. And all those things, I just want a softened look, and I think that's what we achieve. When you go get Botox for the first time, if you're someone who's squeamish with needles, I highly recommend you don't have to be. Nothing really hurts. It's the smallest, tiniest needle possible. I think it's the same needle they inject in babies, which is so sad to think about. When they're doing it in your face, it's like the tiniest little needle. I will say that the nose Botox, a little more spicy than, you know, forehead and glabellas and around the crow's feet, but that's to be expected. You just have more nerve endings in your nose. She also said when you do a lip flip, it's a little more spicy as well. Didn't get a lip flip, so I don't know. But around the eyes, eyebrows, it was great. So I'll show you a little time lapse of my Botox setting in, like the before, just kind of like how expressive and aggressive my face is, and then how I am now. So ultimately there's no downtime other than sitting upright, and then the next day you can go on carrying your day wearing makeup. You're good to go. If you're getting Botox before an event, I highly recommend doing it about a month in advance so you can have that 2-week window for the Botox to fully set in, and then any touch-up at the 2-week mark, and then followed by another 2-week mark for your touch-up to set in. If you're someone who's getting Botox new for the first time, go conservative, go to someone you trust, follow the rules, and be okay with your face. And then again, there's going to be a Botox mishap. If you've gotten Botox before, you know that a Botox mishap is bound to happen. I mean, I'm not talking about complete lazy eye or, you know, something crazy, but there's going to be something maybe that you don't like. So it's always worth communicating with your injector how you felt last time and keeping track of where you injected your face so that you go next time, you know how many units you did, how many units you liked, if you want to go more aggressive, less aggressive. So thank you so much everybody for watching. I hope you found this video useful. This was my experience with Botox. I'm so happy to have Botox again, even if you can't tell as much from, you know, when I didn't have as many expressive lines and wrinkles. But if you did like this video, please give it a like, thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye.